Yeah, the quote, "The words whisper and I write into the wind," is homage to my family. We were a family of storytellers. And it was really interesting because we would tell a story, and then the next time we all gathered again for a big family dinner, the story was embellished even more, and then the next time it was even more. And to this day, when we all get together for a big gathering, us young siblings, those stories are still repeated and they're still embellished. And so that's kind of where it came from. And so I just kind of was always telling stories. And then in 2004, my kids are grown. My husband and we find ourselves with no home improvement projects. And someone had asked me if I would write a short story based on being a single parent, which I was for 9 years with my 2 boys, but about being a single parent of an autistic child. So my younger boy, Derek, was autistic. And so I thought, how hard can that be? So, it's 2,000 words. That shouldn't be hard. So I put together a little story and sent it to her. She loved it. So my very first piece that I write for publication gets published. And that's sort of like playing golf. You hit a good golf shot, now you're a golfer. So now I'm a writer. So I could not wait to write the next story. It embodies me. It's who I am. I mean, it's with me all the time. Whereas before, I just sort of, I was a storyteller, as you can tell by my hands, and that's what I did. And I loved telling stories, and I loved recounting somebody else's story that I'd heard. And now I put all that energy into writing a book, sometimes a short story, or maybe even a blog, but I'm always writing something. And as luck would have it, the news produced, the local news in Portland was showcasing an event where a young girl had gone missing in the Laurelhurst area. And I watched it all day thinking, gosh, how awful is that for her? And just really wanted the girl to come home safely. Well, unfortunately, she did not. And then I couldn't let go of, as a mother, what would you want? Justice or revenge? And that became Peril in Paradise. And I couldn't quit asking that question, which is kind of interesting. You'd think I'd lead with the mother character as my first character to write, but I wrote the villain from a completely different kind of perspective. And once I had this villain, I had about 5 chapters of this villain written. Then the mom piece, Clara, the mother, came to life, and every good story needs a hero. So I created a hero. And that's what led me to writing 3 Points of View. I tried previously to get that book published, and it was rejected, but every rejection letter that I received came back with a sort of a personalized paragraph that said, "You write a very good villain." And so when I went back to Peril in Paradise and looked at it from the perspective of what they were reading, I'd written Clara in first person, and I'd added the hero in there, but he didn't have a voice. But I'd always written the villain with his own point of view, his own third person voice. And I went back and rewrote it with those 3 points of view. Still didn't get a book deal, but I feel the book is way better because you have an insight into each character, and each character tells their version of the story. So I'm working on Peril in Paradise, and when I'm writing this book, I'm living in Redmond, and I'm kind of unhappy over there. So my writer friend Patty, she said, you should join Romance Writers of America because they have a critique group in your area, and you could go in and get feedback on your chapters as you're writing it. So I did. I signed up. I paid the dues. I go to the first meeting. I'm kind of a low-key person. I wait till people start asking me a little bit about myself, and then I start sharing. And so they said, okay, you should come to the critique group meeting, and it's on a different night at a different place. And I show up with my chapters in hand. They read 10 chapters of Peril in Paradise and kicked me out of Romance Writers of America because I'm too dark and twisty for Romance Writers of America. And romance writers, not that there's anything wrong with romance writers, we all need them, but a true romance writer writes to a formula. And I obviously, just by the way I've talked about my books, I'm not a formula writer. So they have to fit a certain romance formula for a book to be considered a romance. And it doesn't have dark and twisty in it. It certainly doesn't have some of my, I don't put anything behind a closed door, so none of my sex scenes would be in a Romance Writer of America's books. So I got kicked out. So then I was on my own for a while. So this is, I started writing in '04, and so now it's 2017, and I've still got these 2 books sitting in stacks of paper, literally stacks of paper on an office floor. And a good friend of mine, Patty Jager, came to visit. She's a writer, and she came out one morning. We're having coffee, and she goes, we're going to self-publish those books because you need to get out of this dark place. My son Derek had just passed away. It had been about 18 months, and I couldn't quite get myself back to where I'd been before. I'm a very positive, the cup's half full kind of a person, but Derek dying took the wind out of my sails, so to speak. So I let her guide me through this self-publishing process, and we get Peril in Paradise comes in the mail, and I couldn't believe I actually had a book in my hands, and I was so excited, right? And then you get introduced to the hero and the heroine. And what's different about that series is eventually the hero and the heroine find their way into a relationship, and I've been able to use that as a kind of a mystery piece, if you will. Will they stay together? Will they not stay together? That type of a thing for readers, because I'm not a soft romance girl. I don't believe in a lot of the guy gets the girl at the end of the book theory. I like a little more give and take and questioning whether it's the right thing to do. So that's how I ended up with the 3 points of view in the Stony Brook series, because it's kind of a full circle thing. I mean, I wrote, but it didn't really become that joy. I call it joy because Derek was the biggest joy. And so, that full circle joy moment in which I have got the thing for it, and that's me. But I mean, I probably would have never published a book. Not that I wouldn't love for him to still be here, but I wouldn't have probably traipsed down this path because I would have been so busy with other things. And it just, God gave me something to replace Derek leaving. So that's 2019 when I get that book published. And I'm working on Malice and Mazatlan to polish it and get it ready for the self-publishing. And I'm not kidding you. I wake up in the middle of the night. I'm dead asleep, and my son Derek, he's been gone now 2 years, sitting on the edge of my bed. He's all dressed up like a deputy sheriff, and he says, "Mom," he always crossed his arms to make a point, "I would make a really good deputy sheriff." And I flew up out of bed, and Randy, my husband, he's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Derek's here." And he's like, well, now we've talked about this. And I'm like, no, he's here. And I went out and I wrote the first 5 chapters of this book at 2:00 in the morning, and created the Stony Brook series to honor my son Derek, who was autistic, but he always wanted to be a deputy sheriff. So I created a fictional autistic deputy sheriff in this series who solves the crimes. So that's how this series came about.